And we're back. And we are moving into our second conversation for today. We are joined by Audrey Matura, activist and attorney, as we talk about the situation of sexual abuse and some of the things that we have been seeing within society today. Good morning.
Hi, good morning. Nice seeing you guys.
Audrey, from one hot topic to another. I think we saw you on the news, and I think people who follow you online know that you've been very vocal about the situation that has taken place with the student from Wesley College. Can we just get a bit of a recap in terms of your perspective as to the situation we're facing in cyberbullying and sexual abuse?
Oh man, it's really bad, and I think it's worse. It's been going on for some years. My advocacy has been for some years. I've been writing about it. I just tired of the writing. So for a change, I said, let me go do a demonstration of solidarity. Mm-hmm. The reason being, it's been way back to one politician, I remember, who was my teacher, that then it was flyers. But in more recent years, so I'll go to the more recent one, I remember of our senator, one of our senators, a young lady that, I won't repeat the name so that people go search, but we had a senator. Yeah. There was a statement issued by the special envoy. A lot of us went rallying, and we had hoped the legislation would change then. And I pin it on that one because this was a person who's part of the National Assembly. So
I remember that case. It was about 3 years ago.
It was about 3 or 4 years ago.
4 years, yeah.
Right? So that was horrible. I don't think any woman deserved that. I don't care who you are.
And it was simply as she was named as senator that...
Right, that they did that.
Yeah.
No proper investigation, I believe, went into it. There was no outcomes. Too often women are very ashamed. Then after that, there've been a series. And when I say a series, what people don't know, because it doesn't make the news, and rightfully it doesn't make the news, is that there've been a few suicides by young ladies at high schools as a result of their nudes being circulated amongst their peers. Mm-hmm. Few of them have actually made the internet that I know of, but it was enough for it to be spread like that. I actually had a case it lasted a whole year, so the last 2 years into last year it concluded, where a young lady was being literally physically abused by her boyfriend when she said, I stopped doing videos for you, because the parents didn't agree with the relationship. He would chat with her and make her do these sexual acts to profess her love for him. And when she said enough was enough, he literally beat the pulp out of her. We went to court for that because it is a family matter, and the nature of it didn't make the news. And then we have the more recent ones, and the more recent ones that has been highlighted that we know of is the one of the teacher in Orange Walk, and then there's the one of Indira, and then there's the one of the student. Mm-hmm. It doesn't mean that there aren't others, I think the scary thing is that every female that has ever taken a photograph, a nude, a video, is on edge, because you never know when when that relationship will go somewhere and it will happen. Yeah. What is bullying is not only that cyber doesn't mean only that it goes on the internet. It's the fact that you use the technology. I can send it from my phone to your phone and everybody's phone. And so now you don't have to post it on the internet, but the fact that you could just press send, forward, it's out there. Yeah. And so it demeans the woman, and it doesn't only demean her. For some reason, it's like rape. Like you start feel guilty, you go through that whole process, denial, guilt, shame, whatever, and then you say nothing, and you become a victim all over again. And so I think that we need to take a whole different approach at several levels: how we deal with it socially, how we deal with it politically, how we deal with it legally, and definitely how we deal with it health-wise, because it has a psychological effect on the person.
Audrey, one of the things that we've heard is now an advocacy for cyberbullying legislation.
Yes.
One of the questions, and I know you've spoken of it as well, but one of the questions I have is, if we're to look at Belize, we've ratified some great conventions. We have some good laws in some areas.
Yes.
Enforcement is perhaps where we're lacking. But legislation doesn't change culture.
Right.
And it would be, I think, very important for us to note that this is more of a cultural issue. The fact that we feel okay humiliating women or girls in this way, the fact that girls are either comfortable or feel obligated to take nudes or videos or whatnot from a very young age, and that we share it as well.
Well,
and speak of people in the way that we do once you've seen it.
okay, several things.
Yeah.
One, grown women do it. I mean, I've seen videos and photos of grown women, and I say over their 50s, right? Two, I agree, legislation won't change the culture, but that is why I said we have to look at it at different aspects. But it is something that the police need to have in their hands, because there are some of us who want the law to address it. There's presently a legislation with a little provision under our, I don't remember the act right now, but one of those minor acts, like not the criminal code, where it says that the possession of and publication of pornographic material, it could fall under there. But the police, they don't use it. But I think that you don't want to be able to guess, and it's streamlined, and it's really difficult sometimes to prove, and knowing attorneys, defense attorneys like Kevin, he'll want to strip that good, right? And say that is not the proof. I think we really need the legislation so that you know not only how it should be dealt with when there's a perpetrator, but also how institutions should deal with you. So that's one aspect. But I think indeed the biggest aspect is the mere fact that we have to be able to openly talk about it, because we have a culture where male are very dominant, and I like to say it very plain. The fact that men have a penis, they are already privileged over me who have a vagina. It's as simple as that. It's a biology that then translates into the psyche and psychology of our nation and our socialization. And so I have heard grown men, yesterday a grown man said, the legal me well know me do it and what me like and whatever. And it's that mentality that then affects us. But then I said, but you have a daughter, and then suddenly it changed. So it's okay to condemn everyone else, and then you forget, hey, you could come knocking at your door. No, that won't happen overnight. But I think we are more vocal now.
Yeah.
A couple years ago, I don't think I would have myself spoken openly about anything dealing with sex and sexuality, just because of the connotation that it has. But as you mature, you realize, you know what? You've been a victim of that feeling that your gender, your sexuality is a weapon used against you. So that's a cultural aspect. Yeah. But we also need to look at the psychology of it. The damage it does to the victims, the damage it does to those around them, and the message it sends to the society is that it's okay for some.
I wanna dive deeper into this issue, because what we're talking about, to me, is perhaps one of the areas where we're seeing the culture that we have in terms of how we perceive sexuality. But it starts here, and it starts in the family. You've been on this show, and we've had many conversations. Yesterday, we spoke to Diana Shaw from Children Development Foundation, talking about the prevalence of sexual abuse in our country, and how it leads to a lot of what we accept as our societal norms. We have a current case at this time, or a current news story, of an allegation against a Roman Catholic priest in the US from many years ago. And the conversation around it, I think, it's not even as prominent about photos on the internet, and we're talking about children being hurt. Is it because we still don't want to build that cat?
It's because usually, this is the irony of it, and I saw it when I was a prosecutor, it's easier for a female to come forward than a male. And usually when you hear about these violations in the Catholic Church, many times it is pedophilia. However, it's also targeting only boys, or mostly boys. And so we have a culture where we make our boys go silent. So a lot of them, if they would be honest, would come forward and then tell you how they have suffered sexual violence from their childhood. But what some of them do to mask it is they become more macho man, and they become more sexually active, and you don't know. It's until years later for me, having studied and learned a lot through dealing with victims and reading up a lot on psychology and sexual abuse, that I realized that, you know what? I missed the signs when I was growing up. I know my colleagues, and I remember there was a particular teacher, and then I remember there was a particular novice, and I'm like, man, we were so naive. We didn't even know what was happening. And then I realized I have approached some of my past peers from my childhood and asked them point blank, and the response, the non-verbal response, told me that I didn't have to ask anything else to confirm that, wow, this was happening when I was a child. I just didn't know about it because we didn't know what it was. And so it means that we need to break the silence, and at an early age we need to talk to our kids. I mean, I'm forced to talk to my 10-year-old now. I show her the news items, I discuss it, I decide to what extent I want her to know, so that she understands, like, this is you can be under attack, this is how it happens, it's people you trust, this is the reason why I don't make you sleep over here, this is like everything. But when we were growing up, they didn't tell us that. It was different. They forced us to sit on the laps of our uncles.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I remember my breast being fondled several times as a child by that, and you're vexed, but you don't tell your
But
parents
that's what
why
mom
you don't
told you
want
to do.
You don't want to go sit on their lap.
Actually, I can't sit here. There's no way I can sit here. And I respect your opinion as to the disadvantage that you perceive in terms of the difference between a male and a female. I wholeheartedly do not accept it.
Okay.
And let me tell you why. And I have to put this out there because I think it is part of the culture that breeds continual sexual abuse.
Okay.
Because there's this perception that there's a disadvantage that women are more vulnerable. That a lot of our male children are abused. I'll give you a simple example. When we send out our female children, I have 2 daughters. I'm very careful as to where she goes, who's going to be at that house, who comes in and out. I see my friends who have male children say, "No, man, yeah, straight." And they leave them to go out and they come back in at a certain time from very early. That opportunity window puts that male child at risk more so than the female child. So we have a culture where we tend to be more protective of our female children than we do of our male. So that disparity can actually breed more abuse than it assists. But my question was more in terms of a practical approach. You're speaking about the engagement between yourself, I assume, and the authorities that be in relation to a previous incident relating to a senator that was about 3 years ago and a movement towards legislation. 3 years is an extremely long time, even for Belize.
I know.
Can you map out for us what the process is? Because you're not at the point where you're doing a march of solidarity. What is the process in between? And how do we move to actually get that legislation? And before I don't have the opportunity to ask this question as well, let me throw it in here, because I'm sure you're able to handle it. Our legislations are drafted by taking examples from other places. Our Families and Children Act, I think it has strong Australian roots, if I'm not wrong. Where is there other legislation that we could adopt, and what is the process to get it in place?
Okay, so you've said a whole lot.
A lot of stuff.
And let's see how good my brain is.
I have to jump in, you know?
At Half Century, let's see how good my brain is.
Yes.
So on the first part that you say that there's more opportunity to abuse your boys, that in part is true, but it's also more opportunity for the boys to become
That was more comment than a
abusive.
question.
Right, no, but they become more abusive because it's more acceptable, their freedom. And so that is the aspect I look at. Because the mere fact right now that these videos circulate, nobody castigating the boys. Nobody. So there's just this culture. I know I grew up in a culture where literally the father of the boys take them to a prostitute joint to deflower them.
Absolutely.
Right? That is the message. They don't do that to the girls. But they tell you that you need to be a virgin when you get married. But he doesn't have to be a virgin. Then who then deflowers him then if I have to remain a virgin?
And that very act of taking them to a prostitution house to be
is an abuse.
Is an abuse.
Yes.
I agree.
It's not seen as an abuse.
But it's an abuse that they then culturalize and say, it's okay, that makes you a man. So I take your point in a certain way as true. However, there is a whole different spin to it when it comes to the woman. So that would be a whole different conversation.
Absolutely.
Then there's the second issue about what's the process in between. Let me tell you, it is most unfortunate that the people who vehemently advocate for this issue, Lisa Schumann being one of the highlighted person, even Diana Shaw being one of the other highlighted person, mostly women, are not in the position to go and draft the legislation. So what we have to do is it's really tragic that we have to be vocal, and it's like almost like putting them in a corner that at some point they have to pass the legislation. Not one move was made then.
But Audrey, I remember...
No move was made to pass any legislation.
But Audrey,
then.
I remember I was watching a show where Lisa Schumann was on, and she said that herself and Dolores Balramos sat in a room.
Yes, they're making proposals.
And they drafted in detail the Domestic Violence Act and submitted it to Mr. Montejo.
And nothing came out of it. So the reason I'm saying it doesn't matter how much us, because there's this culture in Belize, if you're not in a government and never put yourself on ballot, you don't have no right to have a say. And so we cannot get the people who have the power and the say and the offices that can bear a lot on it to act. So we are at the point again where we're pushing again. And and if you notice my post, I am very pointed. as to the different offices that I think can have a say, because it doesn't matter how much I write, it doesn't matter how much I draft, it doesn't matter how much I say we need the law. If the system we have is that someone in government has to table that legislation.
That's exactly it. And that's where I think Kevin asked the question.
That's where
and
our
perhaps
hands
we're
are
gonna
tied.
lose the opportunity, because there is a process to get laws passed. And it takes, which we don't talk, it takes political will.
Exactly.
Because you can
But
draft
the advocacy
the
in between
best.
helps.
Well, advocacy is what leads to some other, it allows for
And
political
it's the
pressure.
education in the meantime
Yeah.
that we're doing. So we're doing our
Because
share.
there are acts that are on, that have been drafted, that are at the Attorney General's office, that benefit children, that have not moved for longer than 3 years.
And the thing is,
juvenile justice.
the thing is,
there's several others. So I think when we talk about, especially children, I can never understand why there isn't a
The delay.
priority. I mean, you never lose if you say you're going to protect your children more.
You know what's the irony? We've seen it. Government will pass a bill overnight to
Free
take over
readings.
BTL,
Free readings.
Yeah.
to pass some law that says that it was legal for them to spend over $10 million for a budget, or anything they want that suits their benefit. But when it comes to these important legislation, which I don't say I want it overnight, because I want there to be discussed
years.
like import.
Yeah.
2 years
But
is
there's
not overnight.
There's no attempt. There's absolutely no attempt. And that is where you need a political will, because what has happened in many governments, and not only ours, in our societies, is that leaders do not see that if you don't develop your people, you will not progress. But then it's intentionally sometimes that they don't develop the people, because when you develop the people, they will not vote for you as you want. You cannot manipulate them. So we have a situation where leaders actually sacrifice, like, if I make them too independent and too smart, and I stop, make them have to feel that they owe me, they will have a mind of their own. But if I can maintain that control and just have enough leverage, then I will always be in power. And that's the sad truth. And the people who would want to truly make a difference can't even break into the barrier and get into the political parties, because you're not prepared to do what the others are doing. So there is need for political will, but it doesn't mean that advocates are to be silenced, because at some point it will give way. I remember the offshore oil thing. How many years did we not advocate and push and did all kinds of things? We even demonstrated, we then did our macro referendum, and finally
It was almost
came.
10 years, right?
So it takes years. And it's just a platform that I will not give up on.
Audrey, I heard this joke. I heard somebody on television saying, it was asked, what can we do in terms of getting legislation pushed? And the joke of the response was that we should lobby our ministers. And you know why I laughed? You know why I laughed when I heard it? 90% of the people who go to see a minister are not asking for legislative change.
No.
They're asking for land, light bill, water bill. And this is the reality.
$50.
Anybody who says
medical
different
bill.
medical bills, nobody goes to their politicians. So
And job.
And jobs.
And a lot of them give sex in return to get it.
Very much
So
personal.
there's sexual abuse there.
Very much
Yes, it
personal issues, not necessarily ideological and big issues.
No.
So my question goes back to, what is the process? A realistic process.
Okay, here my realistic process,
as
right?
to how do we get these legislation
My
passed?
realistic process, some people may not agree with it, but at some point I will shame you until you feel shame enough to do it. Because it's not working otherwise. I wish I could tell you we had a process like in other countries where the opposition
Go to your
can
congressman,
come and do something,
write in your-
or I could go to my congressman. And we have a horrible process. It's exactly what I'm doing. You advocate, and you're shamed into and say, okay, make we shut up that one she. Because I remember when we had the amendments in the criminal code where we were against, we made some changes because,
Yes.
and I must give credit there
Yes.
to the Office of the Special Envoy, because she headed it where we made the changes as to sexual offenses.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that came after years of shaming them. And finally, they had it, and I felt good when they sent me a special invitation to go to the meeting. And we didn't get everything we wanted, but we got some. But how much years it took for us to get that change? At least 10 years. Then it's back to the same thing, but I wish it wouldn't be like that. Someone put on my Facebook, so just give the Office of the Special Envoy a call and discuss it with her. Like, yeah, really. I wish I could. I really wish I could, but I will try it and I will write the letter and everything. But it's not about me, and it's not only about this student. It's been happening. We don't
What
know.
is the difficulty? Why don't you take the advice and call
I
this
will.
person?
I will do it. I will do it, so I'm saying it publicly so she can expect my call. I just think that for advocate, sometimes I have to be aggressive. I'm trying to I have to do a balance, because the issue is very sensitive and you don't want to expose one individual. It so happened that I know of many cases and I don't say anything because I'm like, oh my God, thank God I want to make the internet. And so it's only amongst a few we know. Unfortunately, this one made the internet, and so you do anchor your advocacy on an incident. But I've had conversations with the family. I even spoke with the therapist to find out if taking advantage of this situation and doing the demonstration of the school, if it would have a negative impact on the student, because if it would have, then I would withdraw the demonstration. But the therapist says, no, it actually would be good so that the person knows that there is support. It's support. It says, so what we say and how we say it is very important. And so I had conversation with 2 members of the family already. One who questioned what was the purpose of the demonstration because they thought we were going there to protest the school. Had it been true that the school suspended the student and was being unfair, trust me, it would have been a protest. Having found out from a relative that that's not so, and when we thought it was so, it came from very good sources. I mean, it was on the news and it came from very good sources, so we had no reason to doubt that it wasn't true, because if you all see the interview of the minister, that was what was said. We had no reason to doubt. And then I said to myself, you're such an idiot. You know you're not believing in politicians. Why are you not believing in this time? I just took the bull by the horn. I apologize. But the thing is,
you did, yeah.
The student is not suspended. So I think it's also a way of showing solidarity with the school, that for a change, a religious school has taken a different approach. Because every other religious school, the first thing they want here, just kick them out. And that is another violation.
Well, I think that's a blanket statement, and I think it was Carla Barnett who posted about SCA taking the lead with taking back girls after they got pregnant. So there are some schools that are more progressive, but this does give me a way to bring in another topic. One of the criticisms I think people have at this time is that they feel it's a bit hypocritical, because now people are rallying for this cause, but there have been so many other cases before where people have lost their jobs, that people have been victimized and ridiculed. I know, I'm just telling you what the criticism is. We look at the teacher in muffles. There's no solidarity effort taking place there. And so I think that's one of the things that you keep on hearing about why now, why is it suddenly of importance? What happened to all the other victims before?
That's not true. It's not why now. Well, I don't know for other people. I could speak for myself. Yeah. This is not why now for me. I've written about it so many times in the newspaper, posted on Facebook, do my little advocacy, because remember, I don't carry any clout or name in politics. I can only influence opinions and push, and for me, it's not why now. But it's sad that people will focus on why now, because then when? If not now, then when?
Exactly.
And it's important to note, we don't know of all the instances, but there are some instances I know of that didn't make the news, and because it didn't make the news, I don't think it was my duty to then highlight it and make the news. That is the difference, because it would only create damage. The reason this one gives an opportunity for it to be highlighted again is because it did circulate. It's not like I went out and circulated. And like I said, it's an opportunity to anchor the advocacy again. But even more important, we tried to anchor it before on previous ones that were known, and we still didn't get results. But the fact that we don't give up, we have to continue. Yeah. I think this one, because it involves a minor, because most of them did not involve minors, should tug at the hearts and common sense of our legislators and people in power to say, you know what, it can be my child too, it can be my grandchild. Like, I want them to personalize it and stop being judgmental. It can be your sister, it can be your daughter, it could be...
You know, for young democracies like Belize, it's very important to have advocates and advocacy, particularly when it comes to a colonial system where it was just shut up and dribble. That's what the colonial system is. You just shut up, do your job, and don't talk about the system, don't talk about it. And there are 3 aspects of being an advocate that I find particularly difficult. And I envy you guys in terms of what you do. And in my own capacity, when I've experienced it, it's a very difficult thing. The first thing is the personal attacks that come from it, that you have an interest to serve. The second one is, why this one here? Because listen, there's also this issue and that issue and this issue. So why actually talk about this? And the third issue is really, why now?
Well, and there's a fourth
How do we get distracted in these things?
And then there's a fourth issue. We don't have the finances. I don't have an organization and a finance whatever. I just do it on my own steam. But I wouldn't be distracted by that, because when it comes to the personal attack, if you know the history, I have gone through the mill with everything. And I still remain standing. And interestingly, why I am passionate about it is because when I was attacked personally, it was never about the things I'm capable to do as a woman. It was always about my sexuality. There was Wave Radio that went and spoke even about my vagina, but thank God I have one and I'm proud of it. I empower myself by that, you know. So I know the personal attacks. I know the question why no. And so you all could stay there and say why no. Even if it's a handful of people that come out tomorrow to show solidarity, I'm happy. It doesn't matter to me. It's like what Yaya used to do. She by herself went to the police station and lobbied and see now what came out.
Yep.
What came out? She was all along, she was right about what she was doing. So advocacy is not who all wants to come along, is that you remain true to what you want to do.
And
having no finances and no organization, just being able to articulate is all I need. It's not even about one person. Like I said, if this girl's matter didn't come forward, I would have never used it. I would have heard about it and said leave it, because I know of many.
What about the church perspective, though? What
about the what?
What about the church perspective? Because I'm sure
I had expected a statement from them by now.
Well, I'm actually contemplating the reverse in terms of I've been in some religious circles where the criticism is this: there's a moral factor to play here.
So
I'm not saying this is what I believe. I'm saying that it surely is something that will come up, and I know where it will come from. To say, listen, if you have these pornographic material and this person is responsible for it, then the school has a moral responsibility
to put her out,
to try to keep the moral standards in a particular place. I'm not saying I
want to answer this before no tell me my segment. Let me tell you about it.
You know it's coming.
Yes, it's coming. But
I
want to say that many of them are hypocrites because they do some of the nastiest sexual things against the church rules. I didn't even want to start calling names. You just hear it and you left it. I said to myself, they're grown adults. I worry when it's kids. That's one. Two, let's not forget that our Constitution is our supreme law. And when you decide that you will target the female for whatever moral standards, that is discrimination. But also let's not forget that our laws say that the age for sexual consent is 16. Yep. And ironically, you're not an adult until you're 18. So no school rule trumped that. And let us not forget that our Constitution says, even if you think that someone did something wrong, there is what we call fair hearing. And I always like to remember this case. When I had to do a case against Paloti, and we went all the way to the court and we won it, and it was just on a gossip that the girl have a married man. There wasn't a video, there wasn't a picture, it was just a gossip. I remember in court what was my opening statement, and it will always be my opening statement for any case like this, is that in the Garden of Eden, even when God saw that Adam and Eve had already sinned, he didn't come and just punish them. He said, what have you done? He gave them an opportunity to be heard. So these pious religious people also need to give anybody an opportunity to be heard. And I suggest to every family, please, if you're in a situation where your child is being put out of school for something like that, get an attorney.
Doesn't it affect the school's ability to enforce discipline?
No.
Wait, are you suggesting that she should be disciplined for her behavior?
I am simply putting the perspective.
No, schools need to be more open.
This is not what I believe. Let me make that very, very clear.
I know. You're just being devil's advocate as usual.
I'm trying to put arguments. I'm not trying to be the devil.
No, but you're right to do that, Kevin.
Differently.
The thing is, it should not affect discipline. Let's say, I will applaud right now Wesley College that they took a different approach, because Lord knows there could be some of the strictest people. Because my son went to school there, and thank God no video came out of him. But what did they do? Their usual MO would have been, boom, out you go, and we don't want to hear anything, and no could say anything no one. But they took a different approach. One, they stepped back and they realized, you know what? Let's handle this differently. Mm-hmm. I understand that they're getting counselors in the school to also counsel the students. Taking that approach is very mature, and it's not to make kids feel like, hey, we're not talking about this and on a body for no this. That we start openly talk about their sexuality, and for them to become more aware. Man, that is the most educational thing a school could do. And I will give them kudos for that. So that's what I'm being told, and I hope that they follow through. Now, the aspect with the student, well, I know she got a therapist on her own and going through that, because she needs to also go through a process. But I don't think anybody needs to castigate her, and I don't think that we should go about pointing, oh, that person. And if people don't know who she is, please, I don't even want to know who she is. I don't even want to see the videos or anything. Don't get so corrupted morally, using the word moral loosely, to want to enjoy seeing those things. Denounce it, it's wrong. It's absolute, and it's your
Let me just go back
privacy.
to your,
It's your privacy.
your demonstration tomorrow, because one of the things we were talking about is what the critics are saying. And clearly, anytime there's a change, there's a tipping point. Yeah. And I think what we're hoping for is that this will be the tipping point.
I'm hoping this time we'll get the legislation.
Do you feel that there is sufficient momentum and that it will be able, you know, the demonstration tomorrow will be one step, pushing further for the laws in whatever way we possibly can is another? Do you feel that we are at that tipping point now where people are genuinely taking it seriously?
I'm hoping so. I always remain positive, so I'm hoping so. I really hope so. But you know what? Even if it doesn't happen this time, we will keep pushing. It has to happen at some point. I was reading the legislation in New York, and what I loved about it, just the fact that the guy could threaten, or the girl, could go both ways, or the sweetheart, or the wife, could threaten you that they will release the photo. That is enough to go to the authorities and make it, it's a criminal offense. Yeah. Jail or fine. But just quickly, tomorrow
at midday,
it's not a protest where there'll be music and loud noise and so, because we'll be in front of a school. It's a demonstration of solidarity. We are double playing the word demonstration because the demonstration has a negative connotation, but when you put it with solidarity, it's showing support. Intentionally the double meaning, because it's a silent way also to demonstrate against the fact that we do not have the protection that we need legislative and otherwise. And it's just midday. So sacrifice your lunch hour. We got a lot of donation of water. We would like people to donate at least fruits or snacks, just because we're asking people to go during their lunchtime.
Is the school collaborating?
It is going to be...
No, we didn't ask the school to collaborate, but after speaking to someone last night, I was asked to write them, which I have to do today, and ask them if they don't mind, because on contrary to what people believe, it's not to protest the school, it's not to tear down the students.
It's to stand in solidarity
with the victim. It's to stand in solidarity, and specifically...
Where's it going to be?
Right in front of Wesley College. Just 1 hour, the police gave us the permission already, we got it yesterday, but I want to make it clear why we want to show her solidarity. I thought it was really double standards that the Office of the Special Envoy sent out a statement supporting our media colleague, which I think she deserves. I'm not saying you shouldn't do it. I just wish that likewise the statement would have gone out and they don't have to mention the person by name, but also showing solidarity and support for the student. There are different bases for it, but it makes a big difference.
That's rough to Audrey.
Well, that can be a part of your, but that can be a part of your conversation, which you say you're going to have today.
There would have to be a statement almost every day, because this is a free
that's why I don't make one. Those two broke out the same weekend. Put yourself, you and Marlene had the same crisis the same weekend, and they big up Marlene and support her, and poor you mean nothing. So either you do it for both or you don't at all.
We are out of time, but I do want to remind
everyone. So where they failed, we will do
that the demonstration takes place, the demonstration for solidarity takes place at noon tomorrow in front of Wesley College in Belize City. Thank you, Audrey, for coming in. We're going to go ahead and take a break, and we're going to be focusing on the upcoming Street Art Festival. So stay tuned.